What's going on, guys? The 2023 NHL entry draft is now over, and this video will be grading how every single team did, ranging from Chicago Blackhawks taking Connor Bedard first overall, all the way to Columbus Blue Jackets taking Tyler Peddle with the last pick in the draft. So, starting off here, guys, of course, we have the Anaheim Ducks. I would say probably the first shock of the draft, taking Leo Carlsson at 2 opposed to Adam Fantilli. Definitely, though, Carlsson was still part of that top 3 group, maybe even top 4, depending where you have Michkov ranked. I think Carlsson's still going to be a stud player. I think the numbers he put up this year in the SHL as a draft-eligible player are the best we've ever seen. So, I mean, when you look at it like that, like him and Fantilli, the gap there is so close. I think me and most people would probably still go with Fantilli, but not, like they really reached or something on a crazy worst prospect, anything like that. After him, looking through some of these names, Mijatovic, hopefully I said that right. He's a big winger in the WHL, played for a stacked Seattle team. Feel like he's a power forward, good shot. I think too, Colston Petro there for the Flint Firebirds in the 3rd round. First pick in the 3rd round is good value. Also too, of course, I'm a bit biased, but Rodwin Dionisio on the Windsor Spitfires. I love that pick. First pick in the 5th round. It was so good for us after we got him from Niagara. Definitely our best offensive defenseman. So good offensively. We actually played him at forward at some point. He had a really good World Junior as well with the Swiss team. So overall, I feel like the Ducks did well. I think personally for me, I go Fantilli at the 2 spot, and then I probably take like Andrew Crystal with the first pick in the 2nd round. But overall, not bad. Also, too, guys, one other thing I almost forgot about the Ducks draft here. They actually took this Damian Clary guy, 6'6" goalie from Italy. He's the first ever player drafted from Italy who's actually, plays for Italy on the national stage. Obviously, Lucas Spiza was born in Italy, but he played for Switzerland. So I think that's really cool. And, of course, you can see why the Ducks got him. 6'6", big goalie. I think he actually had decent numbers, too, where he was playing. Now, like I said, I would have went a couple different ways with their top 2 picks, so I'd probably go A- for them. It's good, but could have been better. Now, speaking of surprise at the draft, guys, next year with the Arizona Coyotes, I'm still shaking my head. I literally don't understand what they're doing at the draft. So, first pick, 6th overall, they take Dmitry Simashev, Russian, big defenseman, physical, really solid, defensive defenseman. I had to pick a player comparable for him. It'd be Chris Pronger. Now, I don't see him being anywhere near as good as Chris Pronger, which is why I get 6th overall. It doesn't make a ton of sense. If you're going to go a Russian, why not just take the chance on Michkov? Hopefully you get the next Ovechkin. Simashev here. He was the 2nd defenseman taken. I really don't think he was the 2nd best defenseman in this draft class. Some people might disagree, but again, Arizona here. It's a really strange pick. They followed up too with Daniil Boot at number 12. He's a big winger, 6'5", really powerful shot. He's a guy most people had going late 1st round. And the fact too, both these guys are Russians. As you guys will see throughout the draft, I put a tweet out about it, but most NHL teams were kind of avoiding the Russian players, or if they're going to take them, they're going to take them a lot later because obviously there's more risk involved right now, whereas the Coyotes literally reached on both these guys. Simashev was supposed to be a mid-1st rounder, Boot there, a late 1st rounder. They take him at 6 and 12. It doesn't make a ton of sense to me. They are both teammates playing for Yaroslavl Jr., which is pretty cool, but again, I don't quite get it. Now, their first pick in the 2nd round, Michael Herbal there, I think is actually a great pick. 6'7" goalie, plays in the USHL. Most people consider to be the best goalie in this draft class, so they definitely make up for those 2 first-round picks with him. But then after that, none of their other picks really stood out to me. Obviously, once you get into the later rounds of the draft, there's a lot of guys I just don't know about. Most people, don't know about unless you're really, in those regions scouting these guys. So again, I think I really do like Herbal there at 2nd round pick. I think if it wasn't for him, Coyotes might be getting an F, but because that's a good pick, and also too, even though these guys are reaches, at least, they reached for guys still supposed to go in the 1st round. It wasn't like Boston 2015 or anything. So, I think I'm going to give the Coyotes a D+. I don't think they're quite in that C range. I think they could have done a lot better than they did. So, they do get a D+ there. Moving on now to the Boston Bruins. So, they didn't have a 1st or 2nd round pick. Their first pick, though, was Christopher Pelosi, playing the USHL for Sioux Falls. I think that's not bad value there, late 3rd rounder. After that, though, again, these are just kind of, guys you're taking chances on. Actually, it's kind of funny. 3 Americans followed by 2 Swedes. They don't have a 1st or 2nd round pick. It looks like a pretty average draft based on what they had. So I'm just going to give them a C here. Really not too much to say. Buffalo Sabres, guys. I actually really loved this pick. Zach Benson at 13. I was hoping my Red Wings were going to take him at 9. I was expecting him to actually go way before this pick, so I think Buffalo kind of steals him here. Really cool, too. I know in one of my mock drafts I had him reuniting with Connor Geekie on Arizona, and as it turns out, he ends up reuniting with his other forward teammate, Matthew Savoy, on Buffalo. So, between him, Savoy, Quinn, Cousins, of course you got Tage Thompson, Alex Tuch, JJ Peterka as well. That Buffalo forward core is so young, so good. Even the defense, obviously, between Darlene Power. I think Buffalo is going to be a powerhouse in not too long. After him, some of the picks I liked. Strabak here, actually, second rounder from Slovakia. Another guy in the USHL I thought was pretty solid. Decent defenseman. Ethan Medema here, this is actually another pretty cool pick, at least, for me. Played for Windsor, ended up getting traded to Kingston in the Shane Wright trade. He goes in the 4th round. I feel like, he's a power forward. Wasn't, scoring a ton, but for a draft-year player was actually pretty good amount of points he was putting up, especially, too, for us. We're usually playing, only on the 3rd line. I liked him in Windsor. I think that's really good value there for Buffalo. So, overall, I think, Buffalo here for sure potentially gets the steal of the draft in Zach Benson at 13. A lot of people super, super high on him. And I almost forgot to give him the draft grade here, guys. This one is easy. They get an A+. Again, I think the Benson pick's so good. Plus, some nice 2nd and 3rd rounders. Medema in the 4th round. They did quite well. Now, moving on to the Calgary Flames here. They got Samuel Honzik there at their 1st round pick, mid-1st rounder. I think that's a pretty good pick. A little high maybe on him. He was supposed to go in the 15 to 20 range though, so nothing crazy. 6'3" winger from Slovakia, but he played for the Vancouver Giants in the WHL. Solid two-way game, powerful in the puck. Again, I think I had him going to the Rangers in the 20s. It's not too bad of a pick there for the Flames, of course. They probably don't mind, getting bigger there, playing out west. You got a lot of big teams. I think Etienne Morin as well, very good pick in the 2nd round. A lot of good value on him. Potentially, he was going to go in the late 1st. After that, I just noticed this guy's name here. It's another Ivan. We got Igor Igorov, Russian goalie. I'm going to give them points just for drafting that guy. But overall, I think this was a pretty decent draft from the Flames. I like their first 2 picks. I don't think they're home runs or anything, but they're solid. I give them a B. And next up, guys, we got the Carolina Hurricanes. Their 1st round pick was Bradley Nadeau. He was actually playing the BCHL. And I feel like it's always hard to grade players in that league. As not as high skilled a league as, say, the WHL. So, for me, it's a bit of a riskier pick. His ranking as well was anywhere from around, the 30 spot, late 1st rounder to a mid-2nd rounder. So they got him on the higher end of his ranking. Now, having said that, he did play really well in the BCHL. He averaged over 2 points a game. He's got nasty hands. I think it's probably a pretty solid pick. The one I actually really like for them, Jane Perron here. End of the 3rd round. They almost get him in the 4th. Such a steal. Again, because he's 5'9", he drops in the draft. I think they'll end up being a very, very good pick for the Carolina Hurricanes. And then after that, too, one thing I noticed with Carolina, kind of the opposite strategy of Arizona. They took 2 Russians early. Carolina, starting in the 4th round, started taking almost all Russians. They actually took 5 Russians in this draft. And honestly, I respect that. I feel like they definitely had a strategy here, which was, trying to find value on these guys who are probably dropping, probably getting them later than they should. So again, I think if you look here, just check quickly, guys, and 19 Russians were drafted in total, and Carolina took 5 of them. So more than a quarter of the Russians drafted went to Carolina. We'll see if the strategy pays off for them or not. I definitely respect it, though. I like teams, trying something like this where you're, trying to get an edge. Again, too, the Perron pick in the 3rd round, I really, really like. I think the Nadeau pick was fine. So I'm going to give Carolina an A- here. Looking at it right now, there's definitely potential for this to be an amazing draft for them, but obviously, not for certain things. So time will tell. We'll see what happens. Now, speaking of, certain things, Connor Bedard, 1st overall, the Chicago Blackhawks. That is about a surefire pick as you're ever going to get. They followed up to with Oliver Moore at 19. He fell a little bit in the draft. Absolutely steal of a pick. The best skater in the draft, the fastest skater in the draft. A good two-way game, good hands. I love that pick. I do think, right here, 2nd round, they had the 3rd pick. Andrew Crystal was available. He fell out of the 1st round. Connor Bedard's best friend. He plays roller hockey with him. They knew each other growing up. How do you not take them, reunite those two? Instead, though, they do Adam Gajan. Hopefully I said his name right. Another Slovakian, actually. Cool to see a lot more Slovakians getting drafted. He goes 3rd pick there, so they get a goalie for the future. Was one of the top 4 or 5 goalies in this draft class. I think he was the first one taken over Herbal, which is interesting. I feel like Herbal was kind of unanimous top-ranked goalie, but they still got one of the top 4 ranked goalies, so not a terrible pick. After that, when I was looking through, really no one else jumped out to me. So even though they might not have taken the best goalie in the draft class, which obviously they could have, we'll have to wait and see, they easily still get an A+ here. As they could have taken no one else in this draft behind Bedard and Moore, and they still got an A+. So that one's pretty easy to grade. Next up here with the Colorado Avalanche. So I think they actually did really, really well. They get Callum Ritchie there at 27. He was supposed to be, a mid to late 1st rounder. Actually got to see him play a little bit in Oshawa. Solid playmaker. I think his team wasn't the greatest. But still, draft year, put up decent points. Mikhail Guliev here as well, Russian defenseman, offensive. They get him at 31. And of course, you had Simashev going at 6. There's a chance that Guliev ends up being the better defenseman of the two. So Avalanche there get a lot more value. Obviously, Simashev is more of a physical defensive defenseman. Guliev, offensive. I think, Avs here, again, great value. Of course, Guliev they got back actually with the Alex Newhook trade. The 2nd rounder was Ross Colton. So pretty good work there. After those guys, again, this Russian here, no idea about him. Jerry Hansel was a defenseman for Seattle in WHL. Of course, again, had a stacked team this year. So played on a good team, but, didn't jump out at you or anything like that. Again, though, I really, really like those first 2 picks, so I'm giving the Colorado Avalanche an A here. I think they deserve it. They did quite well. Now, next up, guys, we got the Columbus Blue Jackets. Should just be called like the Columbus Wolverines at this point. First 2 picks, they get Adam Fantilli, who falls to them at 3. The Ducks, of course, passing. Then they get Gavin Brindley here in the second round, pick 34, also from Michigan. Fantilli's teammate. I think Fantilli said Brindley was going to be the steal of the draft. The fact that like he falls to them, how perfect is that? I really thought Brindley would have been gone late first round. So worked out well for Columbus, worked out well for Fantilli. Brindley's another smaller player. You guys can see here he's only 5'8", probably why he fell in the first round, but probably the second best skater in the draft behind Oliver Moore, at least the second fastest. I know Fantilli as well, very good skater, good speed. I think Brindley here, what a pick for the Columbus Blue Jackets. 2 after that, they get a couple other teammates. How cool is that? Liam Whitelaw there. If that was White Claw, 100% best name in the draft. Along with Andrew Strathman. After that as well, Luca Pinelli, Ottawa 67's 4th round pick. I think that's great value. Again, he's 5'9". That's probably why he drops in the draft. They get him later. Of course, Mr. Irrelevant here, Tyler Peddle. It sucks to go last, but at least he was one of the guys that got picked. So, really, guys, I love this draft for the Blue Jackets. I think they did so well. They're another team. They get an A+. I think they did very, very well here. Up next, we got the Dallas Stars. So, Dallas Stars usually, are a pretty good drafting team, at least in recent years. They didn't have a first-round pick or their late second-round pick here. Tristan Bertucci, he's actually a Flint Fiber defenseman. I would say he's a solid player. His second round, like a little bit early on him. And after that, they took another OHL player there, Brad Gardner. He was a center on the Ottawa 67s. Kind of like Seattle in WHL, Ottawa was an absolute beast in the OHL. So, playing on a good team, he obviously was a part of that. After that, really not too familiar with a lot of these kind of later picks here. So, overall, looking at Dallas, I think a pretty average draft. We're just going to give them a C. Next up, guys, my Detroit Red Wings. Look at all those picks. Everyone's going to say I'm biased after this one, but I'll just give you the grade right now. It's an A+. I think Yzerman did so well here. So, 9th overall, Nate Danielson. I will say this is the one part of the draft I have some critiques. I think they should have gone Zachary Benson. I like Nate Danielson. I think Benson, though, has the higher ceiling. We're a team. We've got a lot of good players. We don't have a lot of great players. I think we should have taken a chance on a guy like Benson. Could, turn out to be a great playmaker. He got compared to Mitch Marner. I would love to have a future Mitch Marner on this team. Benson's played center and wing at the NHL level. He's probably a winger. Danielson is a center. He's a bit bigger at 6'2". I know they wanted a center. That's probably what made them lean Danielson's way. So, again, I don't hate the pick. Would have preferred Benson. But Danielson there is still a nice option. Love Sandin Pellikka at 17. I think he could end up being the best defenseman in this draft. So again, at 17th overall is an absolute steal. Definitely, I think, one of the best skating defensemen in the draft. Probably him or Guliev. Has some of the best, hands and passing ability in this draft for defensemen. So can't wait to see what happens with him. Of course, that's the Hronek trade. So basically, already got Hronek's replacement. We followed up with Trey Augustine early in the second round. That's when all like the top goalie prospects started to go. Herabel, Gagin, Bjarnson as well. So Augustine there I think is a nice pick. He's actually a Spitz prospect. He put up the best ever single season save percentage for the under 18 national team development program, which is pretty crazy. It was like a 9.26, so that's a good sign. Andrew Gibson there from the Sioux, solid defenseman. He's also a local kid from LaSalle, so like right around where I'm from. Very, very cool. Braley Cleveland there, just a big defenseman, 6'5". Then you got Noah Dower Nielsen here. This is a really cool pick because we actually drafted his brother a couple years ago. Then the rest of these picks here, obviously, I'm not too familiar with some of these names. I really like what Yzerman did at the draft this year, especially too making that trade for Yamamoto and Costin. Literally getting both those guys from Edmonton for free. I think Yamamoto in a top 6 role with us, with the right players, could really excel. Costin, of course, looked like a solid bomb 6 player on the Oilers last year. So Yzerman, I'm not sure if we can count the trade, but either way, they're getting an A+. He did great work. Now, speaking of the Oilers, so they only had 3 picks in this draft. Bo Akey, though, late second round pick, is actually a solid pick, I think. Nathaniel Day as well, goalie for the Flint Firebirds. I watched him play a couple times. I thought he was a solid goalie. They got him late in the 6th round. You got Matt Coppany here, I'm not really familiar with, but like the 2 picks they did make, I think were fine picks. They didn't have a lot of picks, though, which could probably, affect the draft grade. You're only, picking a few times. I feel like they did decent with what they had here. I'm going to give them a C+. Next up, guys, the Florida Panthers here. So, their first pick was actually a late second rounder. Grayson Sachin there, another guy on Seattle. Wait, I said how that team was stacked, and this shows you like how many guys they have getting drafted. He's a solid playmaker who battles hard for the puck. After that, Luke Coughlin I heard a little bit about. Rimouski, late 6th round pick. That's not too bad. Again, no first round pick for the Panthers. I feel like, they got pretty good value, though, on Sachin, who a lot of people thought was going to be a second rounder. I'm hoping I'm saying his name right as well, but I think Florida did not bad here. I'm going to give them a C+. I think that is pretty fair. LA Kings up after that. I think the LA Kings actually did pretty good work here. Again, another team, no first round pick. They get Jakub Dvorak there in the 2nd round, then they get Zemer in the 3rd. I feel like those are 2 pretty solid picks at those spots. Again, the next 3 guys. Matthew Mania, I saw Sudbury play. He didn't stand out to me, so that's probably why he's a late 5th rounder. But yeah, I think LA Kings here did pretty good. I'm going to give them a B-, because like I said, I think Dvorak late 2nd round, then Zimmer in the 3rd. They got some really good value. Minnesota Wild up next. So Charlie Stramel, this was a bit of an interesting pick, late 1st rounder. Most people had him going like in the 2nd, if not 3rd. Now they do get Riley Heidt with the last pick in the 2nd round, so I thought that was an absolute steal. Throughout like the whole year, he was ranked, mid 1st rounder, then just at the end there, really started falling off his rankings. So I feel like those are the guys that really get the value, especially when they start falling the rankings after the season's ended. It's like, what's affecting their ranking that much? Is it just like bad draft interviews, things like that? Like, I don't know. I feel like those are the things you can so easily teach, like maturity, manners, like whatever it is that made them fall. You can teach those things. Like, that's not hard. It's a lot harder to teach a guy to play like Connor McDavid than it is to teach a guy to say please and thank you. At least that's my opinion. I'm not sure if that's what it was for him. I'm just saying. So that was a steal. Stramel, though, was a bit of a reach. I'm going to butcher his name as well, but Kumpalainen I don't think was a bad 2nd round pick either. So although Stramel was a bit of a reach on the 1st round, I think, Heidt was enough of a steal. I'm going to give them a B-. I think B- is pretty fair because it could have been better, but still not too bad overall. Next year, guys, Montreal Canadiens. Okay, so what an interesting draft. Their first pick there is David.
Bonsoir. Le Canadiens de Montréal are proud to select David
Reinbacher. If you guys watched the price up there on the podium, I felt so bad for him. But David Reinbacher at 5. That was a huge shock, too. I think a lot of people thought if Michkov fell to Montreal, they were for sure taking him. And they go with the defenseman. A lot of people considered Reinbacher the best defenseman in this draft class. Now, having said that, he wasn't really supposed to go in the top 5. He was supposed to be more of a top 10 pick. So Montreal reaches on him a bit. They also pass on Michkov, who was the only guy I think in the whole draft class that would be considered even close to Bedard, more so than Fantilli. It just has to do with all the other stuff with him in Russia, not coming over for 3 years, and everything else involved there. So the Montreal pick, I'm not going to lie, I wasn't a huge fan of Reinbacher at 5. I could prove to be wrong. It could be like, Detroit reaching up and getting Seider. Ends up being a great pick, but initial thoughts, they took him too early, and they could have taken a better player. After that, they get a goalie, Jacob Fowler. It's actually the first of 3 goalies they took. So that's interesting. I wonder, what's the most goalies a team's ever taken in a draft? I feel like 3's got to be close. So clearly, they're just kind of hoping here the quantity over quality method, because they didn't take Fowler till the 3rd round, that they find, their starting goalie of the future. Florian Xhekaj here in the 4th round. So he's obviously Arbor Xhekaj's brother. I think Arbor Xhekaj is a better player. They signed him for free as a free agent after he didn't get drafted. And Florian goes in the 4th round. Like, again, not as good as his brother. And yeah, this is way too early for him in the 4th. After that as well, not really too familiar with a lot of these other guys. So Montreal, I don't think had the best draft. I apologize. I like when Montreal's a good team because obviously one of the biggest hockey franchises, but I don't think this was a good draft for them. When you look at like these last 2 drafts, coming away last year with Slafkovsky 1st overall, Reinbacher 5th overall, I think Montreal fans are going to be upset when they look back at these 2 drafts. Time will tell. I could be wrong, but for right now, I'm going to give them a D. I think a D is fair. Definitely not an F, not a failing grade, but D makes sense. After that, guys, we got the host city here, Nashville. I really like what they did. First pick, Matthew Wood, 15th overall. There is some worries about his skating, but really, really good shot on him. Obviously, big player, too, at 6'4". Tanner Melendijk as well, late in the 1st round. I thought it was a really solid pick. People said I said his name wrong, but then I think it was Pecorino announced the pick. He said it the same way I did, so maybe we're both doing it wrong. Someone said it's like Melendijk or Melendijk, I don't know. Killen Lind as well, 2nd round pick. From Red Deer, I thought that was really good value. Should end up being like a solid middle 6 forward for them, especially too. He's got like, some grit to his game, bit of a pest. I feel like people always love those guys when they're on their team. After that too, I think kind of the coolest moment, honestly, might have been this last pick here, Aiden Fink. So this originally wasn't Nashville's pick. The Devils had it. And the Devils GM, Tom Fitzgerald, who was actually the first ever captain of the Nashville Predators, traded this pick to Nashville so David Poile could make, one last pick and he'd kind of be involved with it. Make it go full circle. You got the first ever GM of Nashville, the first ever captain, kind of working together here on one final pick. I thought that was pretty cool, especially too. Barry Trotz, I believe, was Nashville's first ever coach, and he was, involved, of course, with that pick, being their future GM. And now in terms of the grade, guys, I can't really, count that at all with this grade, but still, I thought they did really well with their 2 first-round picks. I thought Kalen Lind there in the 2nd was nice. I also just noticed, too, they got Dylan McKinnon in the 3rd round. He was a defenseman for Halifax over in the Q. Looked pretty good, decent skater. I like this draft for Nashville. Maybe it is like, just a feel-good moment. I'm giving them an A, though. I think Nashville, they deserve it. And we were just talking about the Devils, guys. They're next up here. So no first-round pick, but in the second round, they get Lenny Hamanaho. I hope I said his name right. He's a smart forward, good two-way game. Supposed to go, mid to late second round, so I think they got good value on him. And then after that, they got Cam Squires, their late fourth-round pick. He was about a point per game this year in the Q, playing for Cape Breton. I think he had like 30 goals. I think that's actually a really good value pick. So after that, you got Cole Brown there from Hamilton. I didn't really notice his game too much. So I think just honestly, the second rounder was solid. Cam Squires could be a steal. So I'm going to give the Devils a B+. I think, they did pretty good work here. And on next year, guys, got the New York Islanders, of course, no first round pick. Detroit had theirs, took Stan and Palika. And the second round, though, they got Danny Nelson. I think it's a pretty good pick. 6'3" Simon there from the U.S. National Team Development Program. Power forward, not afraid to play physical. Has, pretty good offensive skill set as well. Can shoot, can pass. A lot of people thought he might be a late first rounder. So I think the Islanders getting him mid-second is good value. Now after that, none of the rest of the guys really jump out to me. So if they had one above average pick, the rest are just average. I think a C+ is probably fair for the Islanders. The Rangers are up next here, guys. So they get Gabe Perreault there late in the first round. I thought that was an awesome pick. I actually thought Chicago might go his way, but I didn't see Oliver Moore still being available. So they get a pass. I think Perreault, one of the better playmakers in this draft class. Getting him at 23rd there in the first round. Should be a steal. And they actually get a teammate of his on the National Team Development Program, Drew Fortescue. Defenseman there, not bad value, late third round. After that, you actually got another Oshawa player, Dylan Robrek, 6'7" center. So I think he kind of reminds you of like Curtis Douglas, who played for the Spits. You hope this guy can eventually be like a fourth-line center for you, just dominate with the size. I think, getting him in the 6th round is a decent, spot to take him. You're just, taking a chance on a guy. So overall here, I really like the Perreault pick. I think the Rangers here did decent. Again, are they doing like that much better than average? Maybe just ever so slightly. So I give them a B-. I feel like that's a fair grade for them. Up next now, guys, we got the Ottawa Senators. So you might notice they didn't have a first, second, or third round pick. Ottawa Senators this year missed the playoffs. And if you look at like all the teams below them that also missed the playoffs, none of those other teams don't have a first round pick. Most of them actually had multiple first round picks. I think the only ones that had only one were Vancouver and Anaheim. And the rest had at least 2, with of course St. Louis having 3. So if you guys are wondering, like, why didn't Ottawa have a pick till the 4th round? Well, their first round pick was traded for Jacob Chikrin, which I actually think, makes sense. Chikrin's worth it. The second round pick, though, was traded to dump Zaitsev contract. The third round pick was traded to dump Matt Murray's contract. And so because of that, they're left without a top 3 round pick after missing the playoffs, which isn't a great spot to be in. Now, I'm looking at the players here. I personally don't see any like crazy steals or anything. Matthew Ondinovsky is probably the player I'm most familiar with. Defenseman there for Kitchener. He didn't really jump out to me whenever I saw him play. Of course, Spitz got swept by Kitchener first round this year. So I don't know if it's fair because they didn't have those 3 picks, but I'm going to be giving the Senators an F. I think if you miss the playoffs and you don't pick till the 4th round and you don't find any amazing steals or anything like that, you got to get an F. I don't know how we can look at it any other way. Plus, I'm not going to lie, I wanted to give at least one team an F. It seemed like Ottawa made the most sense for me. Apologize, Sens fans. Next year, guys. So a pretty stark contrast, honestly. You got the Philadelphia Flyers, probably had one of the best drafts. First pick, Matthew Michkov at 7. Like I said, the only player who could potentially rival Bedard. I think him falling to 7 is an absolute steal, and I gotta say, I don't really understand a lot of the fear around him, as he showed up at the draft. So clearly, like, he wants to be in the NHL, or he wouldn't have even bothered going to the draft. Like, why would a guy who doesn't ever want to play in the NHL waste his time, his money, going to the draft, being there, getting selected? It makes no sense. So I'm pretty confident Michkov will eventually be in the NHL. Now, will you have to wait, 3 years till his KHL contract is up? Most likely, but there's also a scenario where you can buy him out of that KHL contract, which means he could be over here even sooner. So I feel like this pick is nothing but upside for Philadelphia. Obviously, there is still some risk, but I really, really like getting Michkov at 7. You could be looking back at this draft class, and he could easily be like the second best player behind Bedard. If you guys didn't know, his number 1 comparable is Alex Ovechkin, who's going to go down as the greatest goal scorer in NHL history. That's who they're comparing him to. Like, getting him at 7, an absolute steal. Love that pick for the Flyers. They followed it up with Oliver Bonk at 22, which isn't a bad pick. Probably not the best pick they could have made at that spot. For instance, Gabe Perreault is still available. Would have been a great playmaker to potentially have as a duo with Michkov once he comes over. But Bonk's not a bad pick there either. He was supposed to be like a late first, early second round guy. After that, they get Carson Bjornsson there. Of course, goalie for the Brandon Wheat Kings. He was one of those goalies that's probably like, top 4 in the draft class. They get him a little bit later than the other 3, who of course went early second. They get him in like the mid-second round there. I think he played really good for Brandon this year. I like that pick. Actually, a couple picks later, Denver Barkey there. London Knights, almost in the 4th round, like the second last pick there, the 3rd. I think that's an absolute steal. Barkey there in the 3rd round. When you look at, some of the other players on London, is really, really good values. About a point per game this year in his draft year. Over a point per game in the playoffs, I believe. Again, because he's 5'9", I think that's why you see him slip. After that, too, you got Carter Southern there, defenseman for Portland in the WHL, 5th round. Not too bad of a pick. So you also got this Matty O'Man guy, pretty cool name, 6'6", defenseman from the Q. Obviously, big defenseman. They can always, have a bit of more of a chance to be like a bomb-paired NHL guy just because they have that size, they have that physicality. So Philadelphia here, like I said, one of the best drafts for sure of any team. Easy A+ grade for them. No question about it. Moving on here, guys, to the Pittsburgh Penguins. Kyle Dubas, of course, his first time as GM of this team. Takes Braden Yeager in the 1st round, pick 14. I really like this pick for them. I thought Yeager was going to go right around that spot. He was a guy that was projected to go top 10, maybe even top 5, say like a year or so ago. He had just, really good numbers, playing on like the under 8 team, Canada World Junior teams. As like a 16-year-old, he looked so good. A very good player, I think, pick 14, Yeager. You really can't complain about that one at all. After that, in the late 3rd round, they get Emil Pina-Niemi. Hopefully I said that right. Pretty solid defenseman, I think, to get in the 3rd round. Like a two-way guy, can play power play, can play PK. Also, too, here I see they get Cooper Foster. Put on that stacked Ottawa 67's team. I feel like, Dubas here did pretty well. Did they do anything amazing? I think, it's worthy of at least... So for Kyle Dubas' first draft, I feel like we can give Pittsburgh a B-. I think, that's pretty fair. It's like not jumping off the page at me as an amazing draft, but it was a solid one. After that now, guys, we have the San Jose Sharks. So the Sharks are an interesting one to grade because I really thought they're going to take Michkov at 4. It just fit perfectly. They're going to suck for the next 3 years anyways. Now, they get Will Smith, who was the next best player to take, so you can't knock them for that too much. Quentin Musty there at 26, I think is really good value. Had a pretty good season with Sudbury. Was supposed to probably be higher ranked beginning of the year, but dropped a bit in the draft rankings, kind of like Yeager. I think he had a record for most points ever in a Sudbury Wolves game. Casper Haltman as well, early 2nd round, I think is a great pick there from Finland. In terms of the Sharks draft grade, guys, it honestly hurts me because I feel like Smith was definitely the coward pick there, but I'm going to go with an A. Had they taken Michkov, they would have gotten an A+, but still, overall, I think the Sharks did pretty good. Next up, we have the Seattle Kraken. So Edward Shala there falls to them at 20. I think that could be a steal. Obviously, a lot of people aren't too sure about him, which is why he fell to the top 10, but one of the better playmakers in this draft class. Obviously, he was playing against men over in the Czech League. I think this could turn out to be a very good pick. Then in the 2nd round, they actually had 3 picks. The first, Carson Rakoff there from Kitchener. I thought he looked pretty good. You got Oscar Fisker Molgar from the Swedish League, another decent pick in the 2nd. Lukas Dragicevic, I think, late 2nd round pick is a really good value. Obviously, more of an offensive defenseman, you guys were telling me. Defensive game needs a lot of work, but still, I think he's a guy that has that potential to be kind of like the quarterback of a power play. And they followed that up with actually Caden Price, more of a defensive defenseman, late 3rd round pick there from Kelowna. So I think Dragicevic and Price, late 2nd, late 3rd, such good value. I really like this draft for Seattle. I think they got a lot of good players there. I think I'm going to give them an A+. I feel like they did a really good job in this draft. Can't wait to see kind of how some of these mid-round picks turn out for them. After that now, guys, we got the St. Louis Blues. So number 10, their first pick, Dalibor Dvorsky, was supposed to go right around there. I think that's a good pick for them. Again, I probably lean Benson's way. He was still available. Otto Stenberg there, 25, not a bad pick. I think he'll end up being like a really good 3rd-line center. He's got a great 2-way game. Theo Lindstein, that's going to be an interesting one. He's a guy, of course, was supposed to be like the best defenseman in this draft class, say like a year ago, and then really just draft stock dropped. Ends up going late 1st round there to the Blues. So he's a guy that has the potential to still be good. I think of like a Timothy Liljegren on the Toronto Maple Leafs. He was supposed to be the best defenseman in his draft class. Still ended up being a pretty solid player. So late 1st there for him is not bad at all. Quentin Burns there, Kingston OHL defenseman. In the 3rd round is decent value. After that, you got another Ottawa defenseman. Again, it's funny, like those stacked junior teams, you can see some of their players getting picked. So, St. Louis here, I think, does well. Are they worthy of like an A+? I don't think so. But they had 3 first-round picks, and they got good value at every single one of them. I'm going to give them an A. I think St. Louis here did a good job. Next up, guys, we got the Tampa Bay Lightning. So no first-round pick, but they get Ethan Gauthier there, early 2nd. He, of course, was hoping to go to Montreal before they traded that late 1st for Alex Newhook. Now after Gauthier, they get Jason Chuggaby, who might end up being a good pick. 5'9", so probably, again, another guy dropped because of his size. He's committed to the University of Minnesota Duluth, so obviously a good school program. I think he also played in the USHL this season. So, again, for the 4th round, like that's not bad, as well as Ethan Hay there from Flint. Got to see him play a bit. A decent player, especially, for being his draft year. And the 7th round, I mean, you're just taking a chance on the guy anyways. So, I'm going to give them a C+. I feel like that's pretty fair, especially, for not having a first-round pick. After that, guys, we got the Toronto Maple Leafs. So, this is what I was kind of alluding to earlier. I actually didn't even realize they only had 3 picks in this draft. Of course, they do have a first-round pick in Austin Cowan for the London Knights. That's what I was talking about with Philadelphia. They get Austin Cowan 28th overall, and you had Philadelphia taking Denver Barkey 95th overall. I'll show you guys their points right now on screen. Barkey was putting up more points in the regular season and the playoffs. He's just 2 inches shorter, and so he goes 67 picks later. Like, I don't understand it. Cowan could end up being the better player, but in terms of value, I think just Barkey there so much more. After that, Chadwick and Lethbridge, the big kind of defenseman from out west. I think the Leafs, I don't think I like their draft. I feel bad, Toronto fans, especially the two biggest NHL franchises, Toronto and Montreal. I'm ripping on their drafts. People aren't going to like this, but I give Toronto a D. I don't think you could give them a D-. That'd be, too mean, but Cowan, I feel like could have traded back and gotten at least in the second round, maybe even in the third round. Of course, they only had a couple late picks after that, so yeah, Toronto there gets a D. And up next, guys, we have the Vancouver Canucks. Their first pick, 11th overall, Tom Melander. Honestly, I thought he was going to go around here. I expected, though, Arizona to get him at like 12, and that would be a bit of a reach. So the fact he goes 11 is quite a reach. Like, he's probably more of a, teens to 20 first-round pick guy. I feel like the Canucks here, a better pick would have been Sandin Pellikka, for instance, or even just taking Zachary Benson. He's from the Vancouver area. I don't know. I feel like, there's better choices. Third round here, Hunter Brucewick from Kitchener. When I watched them, was definitely one of their best defensemen. So I like that pick in the third round. Sawyer Mineo there from Seattle. Again, just another stacked team getting a player picked. That's not a bad pick either, late in the third. After that, not too familiar with these other guys. So I feel like the Canucks had a decent draft. Willander, though, probably wasn't the best pick they could have made. For that reason, I'm going to give them a C-. I think that's fair there for Vancouver. Up next here, guys, are the Vegas Golden Knights. So their first round pick, 32nd overall, David Edstrom. He's a really solid two-way center. He kind of does it all for you, of course. He's got that size, 6'3". Reading like the scouting reports on him, I feel like he's probably just going to be like that perfect, prototypical third-line center. Matthew Cataford as well in the third round from Halifax. I think it's a really nice pick. Really good offensive player. Can pass, can shoot. I think third-round pick for him is really good value. So looking at Vegas here, they're at least getting a C. I feel like that's, a couple decent picks based on where they're drafting. Didn't have a ton of picks either. I'm going to give them a C+. I think, they did, pretty good with what they had. Washington Capitals are up next here, guys. Really like the draft that they had. So Ryan Leonard at 8, I think, is great value. They're the team that finally takes Andrew Crystal, stops him from slipping even further in the draft. Pick number 8 there in the second round, 40th overall. I think he's a guy that can end up being an absolute steal, one of the biggest steals in this draft. For him, the number one concern is his speed, but like his skating overall actually isn't bad. He's got really good edge work. He's got great hands. He can shoot. He can pass. I feel like he's going to end up being a guy that a lot of teams regret passing on. Cam Allen in the 5th. I think, he's a guy that fell probably more than any other prospect. Early on in the year, he was projected to go like top 10. I think I maybe even saw him as like, the 5th overall pick. To fall all the way to the 5th round is such a fall. I don't know if I've ever seen that before. So he's a guy that could also end up being an absolute steal. Even if he ends up just being a bottom pairing defenseman, to get a guy that's actually going to play in the NHL in the 5th round is a great, great pick. I really like this draft, the Washington Capitals. I think, finally getting Crystal there early second is a really great pick. Leonard 8th overall, Cam Allen there in the 5th. In regards to the grade, guys, I was honestly trying to decide between like an A or an A+. I feel like the other teams I gave A+s to, though, like Columbus, Detroit, Philly, made a lot more picks. So because of that, they're not getting as many players. Washington, though, still does get an A. And now finally, guys, the Winnipeg Jets here. So Colby Barlow, 18. I thought that was a very good pick. He kind of falls a bit there. Power forward winger. Really good shot. Good net front presence. He's always like tipping those pucks in, getting rebound chances. Thomas Milic here is a very cool pick. Obviously, Canada World Junior goalie. Goes in the 5th round as a 20-year-old as well. So I think it's the last year he could have been drafted. Also, too, Connor Levis here for Kamloops. I think it's a solid player. I'm pretty sure he went up like a point per game his draft year. I think that's really good value there in the 7th round. Also, too, Jacob Julian, another London Knights player. 5th round pick there, center. 6'4", pretty big guy. Good value. Not too familiar with the 3rd round pick, but overall, I think the Jets did well. Got some good value late in the draft. I'm going to give them a B+. So those are my draft grades, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed this one. Let me know what you thought about your team's draft in the comment section below. If you guys did enjoy the video, leave that thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed yet, hit the sub button down below. Thank you guys so much for watching. Have a nice day. Goodbye.